Ahmed lived in a small neighborhood in Lahore. He was 22, full of dreams, but one weakness kept holding him back: English speaking. In school and college he was an average student. But whenever a teacher asked a question in English, his tongue froze. Words stuck in his throat, his face turned red, and his heartbeat raced. He felt smaller in front of everyone, as if he didn't belong. One morning the principal announced, "Ahmed, tomorrow you'll give the morning speech in English. Your voice is clear, you'll do great." Ahmed smiled nervously. "Okay, sir," he said, but inside panic spread like fire. That night he stood in front of the mirror trying to memorize his lines. "Good morning, every. He stopped. His own reflection stared back, helpless. "Why is this so hard for me?" he whispered. The next morning, standing on stage in front of hundreds of students, his hands trembled. He took a deep breath and started, "Good morning, everyone." Silence. Then a giggle from the back. Then laughter. "Ha ha. What is he saying?" someone shouted. Ahmed's heart broke. He rushed through his lines and stepped off the stage, hiding his tears. That evening he sat quietly at the dinner table. His mother noticed. "What happened, Ahmed? You look upset." He lowered his eyes. "Ammi, I can't speak English. People laugh at me." His mother smiled gently. "Let them laugh today, beta. One day they'll clap for you." Those words stuck deep inside his heart. That night, lying on his bed, Ahmed picked up his phone and opened YouTube. He typed, "How to speak English fluently for beginners." The first video title caught his eye. 7 Habits for Fluency in English. Speak naturally in 15 minutes a day. He pressed play. A calm voice said, "If you give just 15 minutes every day, you can change your English and your life." 15 minutes? Could it really be that simple? Ahmed thought. The video talked about small, consistent habits. How fluency wasn't about studying for hours, but about showing up daily, even for a few minutes. That night he made a promise to himself. The next morning he stood in front of his mirror again, but this time not with fear but with determination. He opened the timer app on his phone. 1500 hours. He pressed start. "My name is Ahmed. I want to speak English confidently." His voice shook at first. "My name is Ahmed. I want to speak English confidently." He tried again. And again. By the 5th time his tone was stronger. 15 minutes passed. He stopped the timer and looked into his own eyes. And smiled. "Maybe this is the first day," he whispered. "I've defeated my fear." That evening he took out a small notebook, opened the first page and wrote in bold letters, 7 Habits for My English Fluency Journey. Under it he wrote habit number 1. Practice for 15 minutes every day. No excuses. From that day on he made a silent promise to himself that he would no longer respond to laughter with anger. He would answer through action. He would build his English, day by day, habit by habit. At night as he lay in bed his mind wouldn't rest. The same thought echoed inside him. Can I really become fluent one day? Then a small voice within answered, Yes, Ahmed. Every day you show up, you move closer. He closed his eyes, took a deep breath and said softly to himself, Tomorrow a new Ahmed will begin, one who doesn't run from his dreams but walks toward them. The next morning, Ahmed woke up early. The sky was still pale blue and the birds outside were already singing. He felt something new inside him, a spark of motivation. Yesterday he had made a promise. Today he was going to keep it. After brushing his teeth and making a cup of tea, he sat down on the small balcony outside his room. The city was waking up. The sound of motorbikes, a vegetable seller shouting, a faint azan echoing from the mosque. Ahmed smiled. "This is how my English journey will start," he said softly. He took out his phone and searched for English podcast for beginners. After scrolling for a few seconds, he found one titled, Everyday English. Speak naturally in 15 minutes a day. He plugged in his earphones and pressed play. A warm, calm voice said, "Hello and welcome to English Unleashed, the podcast that helps you speak English confidently, step by step, day by day." Ahmed leaned back and closed his eyes. The speaker's tone was friendly, clear, and rhythmic. He didn't understand every word, but he didn't stop the audio either. He listened again and again. The podcast was about daily routines. I wake up early. I brush my teeth. I make breakfast. Simple, short sentences, yet every line felt like music to Ahmed's ears. He repeated the sentences quietly. I wake up early. I brush my teeth. I make breakfast. For the first time, English didn't sound scary. It sounded alive. It had rhythm, tone, and feeling. Sunrise, the realization. After 15 minutes, Ahmed removed his earphones. He noticed something surprising. He felt more comfortable with the language. He hadn't studied grammar. He hadn't memorized vocabulary lists. He had only listened. He realized that listening was like planting seeds. Every word he heard was a tiny seed that would one day grow into natural speech. He smiled and said to himself, "If I can hear it enough times, I can say it one day." From that day he made a new rule for himself. Habit number 2. Listen to English every day, even if you don't understand everything. Headphone morning ritual. Every morning, Ahmed made a cup of tea, plugged in his earphones and listened. Podcasts while brushing his teeth. Podcasts while walking to the bus stop. Even short videos while waiting in line. He noticed how native speakers paused, how they used expressions like, actually, I mean. He started mimicking their intonation softly when no one was watching. Sometimes people around him thought he was talking to himself. But Ahmed didn't care. He was practicing. Books. The transformation begins. After a week of listening daily, something magical happened. One evening, while talking to his younger sister, he accidentally said, "Don't worry, it's okay," instead of "Fikar mat karo." He froze. Did he just speak in English? Naturally? His sister laughed. "Wow, English boy." Ahmed smiled shyly, but deep inside he felt proud. It was the first sign that his brain was starting to think in English. Light bulb, the moment of insight. A few days later, while listening to another podcast, he heard the phrase, "Fluency is not about knowing everything. It's about understanding enough to keep the conversation alive." Those words hit him deeply. He realized that for years he had been waiting to know everything before speaking. That fear of imperfection had stopped him. But now he saw the truth. Even babies learn by listening first, not by studying grammar books. He laughed to himself and said, "So I'm not too late. I'm just starting like a child learning his first language." Mantelpiece clock, the daily habit. Ahmed started setting a 15-minute listening goal each morning. Sometimes it was a podcast. Sometimes it was a YouTube conversation. Sometimes just English songs with lyrics. He created a small checklist on his wall. White heavy check mark, listen every morning. White heavy check mark, repeat one phrase aloud. White heavy check mark, use one new sentence during the day. Within 2 weeks, his pronunciation started to improve. He could feel the difference in how he said words like morning, beautiful, and thank you. Listening had started shaping his speaking, just like music trains a dancer's rhythm. Thought balloon a silent reward. One night, as he lay in bed with his earphones on, he listened to a podcast episode titled, Believe You Can Speak. The host said, "Fluency is not a talent. It's a habit. Listen daily and your brain will start to sing in English." Ahmed smiled. He remembered his mother's words. "One day they'll clap for you." He whispered softly, "Maybe that day is coming closer." He turned off the phone, closed his eyes, and fell asleep. This time not to the noise of self-doubt, but to the quiet rhythm of English words echoing in his dreams. Sparkle's lesson from Act 2. Fluency starts with your ears, not your mouth. The more you listen, the more natural you'll sound. Habit number 2. Listen to English daily, podcasts, songs, or conversations, and let your brain absorb the rhythm of the language. Days were passing quietly, but something inside Ahmed had begun to shift. He was no longer afraid of English. Every morning he listened, every evening he practiced. But now another challenge stood in his way. He didn't know enough words. He realized this one evening while texting his friend Fawad. Fawad had written, "Bro, how was your day?" Ahmed typed, "Good." Then he paused. He wanted to say more. He wanted to describe his day, how productive it felt, how he enjoyed his new habit, how he listened to podcasts while having tea. But the words wouldn't come. He sat there staring at the screen, feeling limited by his vocabulary. He whispered, "I know what I want to say in Urdu, but I can't find the English words." That moment hit him hard. He remembered something from one of the podcasts. Vocabulary isn't about big words. It's about the right words. Spiral Notepad, the notebook of words. The next day, Ahmed bought a small blue notebook from a nearby stationery shop. On the first page he wrote in neat handwriting, "My English word bank." Every day after listening to his podcast he picked 5 new words. Not too hard, not too easy. For example, improve, confident, daily, progress, achieve. He didn't just write them down. He created short sentences for each. "I want to improve my English. I feel more confident every day. Learning is a daily habit. I can see my progress. I will achieve my goal." Then he read them aloud again and again until they rolled smoothly off his tongue. He smiled. "These words are like new friends," he thought. "And every friend helps me say more." Headphone making words alive. One evening while listening to his podcast he heard the host say, "Don't just memorize words, use them in your life. A word you use becomes your word." That line stayed with him. From that day he decided that whenever he learned a new word he would find a reason to use it. If he learned grateful, he would text his friend, "I'm grateful for your help." If he learned motivation, he would tell himself, "I have the motivation to keep going." He wasn't just learning, he was living his vocabulary. Mobile phone, the flashcard trick. Soon Ahmed found another method that made learning fun. He downloaded a free flashcard app on his phone. Each time he learned a new word, he added it to the app with a sentence and an emoji. For example, spiral calendar, consistent. I'm consistent with my practice. Headphone listen. I listen to English every morning. Flexed biceps, confident. I feel confident when I speak. Whenever he had free time, on the bus, in line, or before bed, he opened the app and practiced. He felt like he was building a secret superpower word by word. Speech balloon, using words in real life. After 2 weeks, his vocabulary notebook had over 50 words. One afternoon his friend Fawad called. Bro, how's your English going? Ahmed smiled. It's improving, he said naturally. Fawad laughed. Wow. You said it perfectly. That small compliment felt bigger than any prize. Ahmed realized his practice was working. Every new word gave him a new piece of confidence. He wrote in his notebook that night, "Every word I learn adds one more brick to my confidence." Sunrise learning from the world around him. Soon he started noticing English everywhere. On shop signs, posters, product labels, and billboards. The words that once felt meaningless now had power. When he saw a refreshing taste on a drink bottle, he smiled and whispered, "I know that word." Became a game, spot the word. Everywhere he went, he collected new ones like treasures. He even started keeping sticky notes on his mirror. Each note had one new word and its sentence. Every morning while brushing his teeth, he read them aloud. Belief, Tony, focus, patience. The mirror wasn't just showing his reflection anymore. It was showing his progress. Light bulb, the breakthrough moment. One day, while recording a short voice note for himself, he said something new. "My English is not perfect, but I'm improving every single day." He listened to the recording and smiled. His pronunciation wasn't flawless, but it was clear, confident, and honest. He finally understood that learning vocabulary wasn't about memorizing long lists. It was about connecting words to feelings, to moments, to life. Sparkles a quiet night of pride. That night, before sleeping, Ahmed opened his blue notebook again. He flipped through the pages, from improve to achieve, from motivation to believe. Each page told a story of his effort. He whispered softly, "I used to think English was a mountain I could never climb. But now I see it's just a path. And every word I learn is a step forward." He turned off the light, feeling peaceful. The words he learned that day danced gently in his dreams. Ahmed's progress was steady. Every day he practiced for 15 minutes, listened to English podcasts, and filled his notebook with new words. But there was still one wall he hadn't climbed yet: speaking with real people. Whenever he tried, his confidence vanished. He spoke well in front of the mirror, but when someone else listened, his brain froze. The words that came so easily alone suddenly disappeared in front of others. One evening, while having tea at a nearby cafe, his friend Fawad said, "Bro, you've been learning for weeks. But when will you actually start speaking with people?" Ahmed looked down at his cup. "I do practice, but when someone is in front of me, I forget everything." Fawad smiled. "Then today is the day we change that." Hot beverage, the first conversation. Fawad leaned forward. "Let's talk in English for 10 minutes. Just the two of us. No Urdu." Ahmed's eyes widened. "No Urdu? Bro, I'll make so many mistakes." Fawad laughed. "Good. That means you're learning." Ahmed took a deep breath. "Okay, let's try." He started slowly. "How are you today?" Fawad replied, "I am fine, and you?" Ahmed smiled nervously. "I'm good. Today, I listen podcast." They both laughed. Fawad said, "Great. You listened to a podcast. You see, one mistake fixed." For the first time, Ahmed wasn't embarrassed. He was learning. Live. As they continued, his words came out smoother. He stopped worrying about grammar. He focused on meaning. By the end of 10 minutes, he had made more than 10 mistakes. But he felt free. He realized that speaking wasn't about perfection. It was about courage. Microphone, the new rule. That night, Ahmed wrote a new rule in his notebook. Habit number 4. Speak every day even if you make mistakes. He underlined it twice. The next day he decided to push himself further. At a small grocery shop near his house he usually spoke Urdu. This time he tried English. "Brother, how much this one?" he asked, pointing at a packet of biscuits. The shopkeeper looked confused, but Ahmed smiled and continued. "I want 2 packets, please." The shopkeeper nodded, half amused, half surprised. As Ahmed left the shop, he laughed to himself. "Maybe my grammar wasn't perfect," he thought, "but I spoke, and that's what matters." Telephone receiver practicing everywhere. He started creating opportunities to speak. He spoke in English while ordering food. He spoke English with his younger sister at home, at least a few sentences each day. He even recorded short videos of himself speaking on his phone. Sometimes he would replay them, noticing his mistakes. "I said he don't instead of he doesn't," he'd note. But instead of feeling bad, he'd smile and say, "Next time I'll fix it." Slowly, those mistakes became his teachers. Speech balloon. The mirror talks return. The mirror, which once reflected his fear, now reflected his progress. Every morning he looked at himself and started a small conversation. "Hi Ahmed. How are you today?" "I'm great. I listened to a new podcast. It was about confidence." "What did you learn?" "I learned that mistakes are part of success." He had created his own English world, where the fear of judgment didn't exist. Light bulb. The confidence moment. One day during his college English class, the teacher asked, "Can anyone explain what fluency means?" Ahmed hesitated for a second, then raised his hand. His classmates turned to look at him, the same ones who had once laughed at his speech. He stood up. "Fluency means speaking naturally. Not fast, but confidently." The teacher smiled. "Excellent, Ahmed. That's the best definition I've heard today." A wave of pride washed over him. For the first time, English didn't feel like an enemy, it felt like a friend. Brain. The shift in mindset. That evening, Ahmed reflected on his journey. He realized that for years he had waited for the perfect moment. A moment when his grammar would be flawless and vocabulary rich. But that moment never came. Then he understood the truth. If you wait for perfection, you'll never start. But if you start, perfection will follow. Speaking was not a test, it was a journey. And mistakes were simply signs that he was moving forward. Crescent moon. The fear melts away. That night, while journaling, he wrote, "Today I spoke English in class. My voice didn't shake. My heart didn't race. I just spoke." He closed the notebook and smiled. The fear that had once controlled him was now shrinking, slowly fading away. Before sleeping, he whispered to himself, "It's not about being perfect. It's about being brave." The same laughter that once hurt him had now turned into motivation. Ahmed wasn't chasing approval anymore, he was chasing progress. Sparkle's lesson from Act 4. You don't become fluent by avoiding mistakes. You become fluent by making them, and learning from them. Habit number 4. Speaking head. Speak every day. Speech balloon. Don't fear mistakes. Flex biceps because each one brings you closer to confidence. A week after his class success, Ahmed realized something new. He could think in English now and even speak without fear. But his flow still wasn't natural. Sometimes his tongue stumbled. Sometimes his rhythm broke. He knew the words, but they didn't come out smooth. He wanted his English to sound natural, like the people he heard in podcasts. He wanted his voice to flow, not fight for every sentence. So one night while scrolling through YouTube, he found a video titled, "How to Speak English Fluently, Shadowing Technique." He clicked it. A friendly voice explained. Shadowing means listening to a native speaker and repeating their words exactly as they say them, matching their tone, rhythm, and emotion. Ahmed sat up straight. He whispered to himself. Repeat like an echo. Interesting. Studio microphone first attempt. The next morning, Ahmed put on his headphones, opened the podcast app, and chose a short story from English Unleashed. The host said slowly, "Good morning, learners. Today we'll talk about the power of habits." Ahmed repeated immediately, "Good morning, learners. Today we'll talk about the power of habits." His voice echoed the host's, a little slower, a little unsure, but still strong. He listened again, repeating sentence after sentence, matching the rhythm and stress of each word. At first, it felt strange, like pretending to be someone else. But after 10 minutes, something magical happened. His mouth began to move naturally. His tongue rolled through words more smoothly than ever before. It felt like music, and he was learning the rhythm of English. Repeat button, the practice routine. He made it a daily routine. 15 minutes of shadowing, every morning before breakfast. He'd pick one short clip or podcast, about 1 minute long, and repeat it again and again until it sounded close to perfect. He shadowed conversations, speeches, and even movie lines. Sometimes he used the same clip for 3 days straight. Each time he noticed new things. A softer T, a longer a smoother R. One day he shadowed a scene from a movie. "You can do anything if you believe in yourself." He repeated it 5 times with full emotion. "You can do anything if you believe in yourself." By the 5th time, his pronunciation was almost identical. He smiled and whispered, "I sound fluent." Mirror plus shadowing. Soon, Ahmed combined shadowing with mirror practice. He stood before the mirror, played a sentence, paused, and repeated it with the same tone. He didn't just copy the words. He copied the attitude. When the speaker was confident, he spoke confidently. When the speaker smiled, he smiled too. When the speaker whispered, he whispered. He realized that fluency isn't only in words, it's in emotion. His English began to feel alive. It wasn't robotic anymore. It had rhythm, melody, and feeling. Speech ballooned the transformation. After 2 weeks of shadowing, Ahmed's English had changed. He didn't translate in his head anymore. He didn't pause to think about grammar. Words just flowed, naturally, easily. One evening, Fawad called him. "Hey Ahmed, you sound different, bro. Did you join some course?" Ahmed laughed. "No course. Just practice and shadowing." Fawad replied, "Man, your pronunciation is fire." Ahmed felt proud, not of sounding like someone else, but of becoming the confident version of himself he always wanted to be. Mobile phone from listener to creator. Inspired, Ahmed started recording short audio notes. He would listen to one podcast clip and then record his own version of it. He compared both, noticing tiny differences in tone and speed. Sometimes he thought, "I still sound stiff here." Other times, "This part's perfect." He realized shadowing was like a mirror for the voice. Every mistake was visible and fixable. His speaking became smoother. His tone became more natural. And his hesitation almost disappeared. Headphone, one sentence that changed everything. One day he heard his favorite English teacher say, "Your mouth must practice more than your mind." That line hit him deeply. He realized he had always focused on understanding English. But true fluency came from producing English. From that day he spoke aloud whenever he could. While walking, while cooking, while cleaning. Sometimes people stared, but he didn't care. He was training his tongue just like an athlete trains muscles. Every day he shadowed. Every day he improved. Crescent moon reflection night. One night, as he looked at his reflection in the mirror, he whispered, "I don't just study English anymore. I live it." He smiled. This habit, shadowing, had unlocked something powerful inside him. He could now express emotions, not just sentences. He realized that fluency isn't about knowing many words. It's about letting words flow freely from your heart. He closed his eyes and said softly, "I'm not copying others anymore. I'm becoming fluent, in my own voice." Sparkle's lesson from Act 5. You don't become fluent by studying harder. You become fluent by speaking with rhythm, tone, and feeling. Habit number 5. Headphone shadow native speakers. Speaking head repeat like an echo. Dizzy, let your tongue and heart learn together. Ahmed had come a long way. He listened every day, shadowed podcasts, spoke bravely, and practiced like a warrior. But deep inside, one problem still remained. Every time he spoke, he still had to translate from Urdu to English in his head. Whenever someone asked him a question, he paused for a second, thinking, "Okay, what's this word in English?" That tiny pause slowed him down. Sometimes it made him lose confidence. He realized that real fluency doesn't come from words, it comes from thoughts. He whispered to himself, "If I can think in English, I can speak in English." Brain the realization. One morning, Ahmed was making tea. As he poured the milk, he caught himself thinking, "Did Zayada ho gaya?" Then he quickly corrected his thought. "The milk is too much." He smiled. "That's it. I can change my thoughts into English." So he made a small plan. For 1 week, I'll try to think everything in English. Not just speaking, thinking. Sunday 1, the mental gym. The next day he woke up and said aloud, "Good morning, Ahmed. Time to start the day." He brushed his teeth, whispering, "I'm brushing my teeth. My toothpaste smells fresh." He looked at his clothes. "What should I wear today? The blue shirt or the white one?" At first it felt strange, like his brain was working too hard. But he continued hour after hour. Every thought, every tiny decision, in English. When he forgot a word, he didn't stop. He described it instead. For example, when he couldn't remember toothpaste, he said, "That thing I used to clean my teeth." He laughed, but it worked. He realized that fluency is not about perfect vocabulary. It's about expressing ideas. Hot beverage, the inner dialogue. In the afternoon, he sat with his notebook and wrote, "Talk to yourself in English." All day. He created a new game called English in My Head. Whenever he thought something in Urdu, he had to instantly rephrase it in English. At the bus stop, instead of thinking, "Bus der a rahi hai," he told himself, "The bus is late." At dinner, instead of thinking, "A kana tasty hai," he smiled and said in his mind, "Today's food is delicious." Slowly something started to change. His mind began to switch languages. Not by force but naturally. English wasn't foreign anymore. It was becoming the language of his thoughts. Open book, the English journal. To strengthen this habit, Ahmed started writing a small English diary. Every night, just 3 sentences about his day. "Today I spoke English with my teacher. I made some mistakes, but I was confident. Tomorrow I will do even better." At first his sentences were simple. But soon his grammar improved automatically. Because his brain was now living in English. He wasn't memorizing grammar rules anymore. He was using them naturally. Puzzle piece, the dream moment. After a few weeks, something incredible happened. One night, Ahmed had a dream. In the dream he was talking to someone, in English. When he woke up he couldn't believe it. He whispered, I dreamed in English. He smiled and laughed with joy. It was the first time English had entered his subconscious mind. That was the day he knew his brain had crossed the border. He was no longer just learning English. He was thinking in it. Balloon the test. One afternoon in class his teacher asked, Ahmed, can you explain what you did this morning? He answered immediately. No pause, no translation, no hesitation. I woke up early, took a shower and made some tea. Then I listened to a podcast about motivation. The words flowed out like water. The teacher nodded. Excellent. Very natural. Ahmed realized he hadn't translated a single sentence in his head. It had come straight from his thoughts, in English. Globe showing Europe, Africa the new perspective. He began noticing how English words shaped new ways of thinking. When he said, I can, it made him feel powerful. When he said, it's okay, it calmed his heart. He realized that learning a new language wasn't just about communication. It was about creating a new version of himself. Urdu was still his soul, but English was becoming his bridge to the world. He could now connect, understand, and express with people from any country. The language barrier that once trapped him had now turned into a door, and he had the key. Crescent moon reflection night. That night, Ahmed sat on his balcony feeling the cool wind. He looked up at the stars and whispered, I used to be afraid of English, but now it's my second voice. He opened his journal and wrote, I don't translate anymore. I think in English. And that's the moment I truly became fluent. He smiled not because he had mastered grammar, but because he had mastered mindset. Sparkle's lesson from Act 6. Fluency begins not in your mouth, but in your mind. Habit number 6. Brain think in English. Speech balloon stop translating. Globe showing Europe, Africa live your day, in your second language. Ahmed had come full circle. Months ago he couldn't even introduce himself confidently. Now he could speak naturally, think in English and express his ideas without fear. But when his cousin Saad visited from Karachi one weekend, he asked him something unexpected. Bro, how did you do it? You speak so confidently now. Did you take classes? Or join some academy? Ahmed smiled. No, I just practiced 15 minutes a day. Saad laughed. 15 minutes? That's nothing. Ahmed's smile grew wider. That's what I thought too, until I realized those 15 minutes changed my life. Hourglass not done, the beginning of the routine. Ahmed remembered his first day, the notebook, the podcasts, the mirror talks. Back then 15 minutes felt too little. But those 15 minutes had turned into a ritual, sacred, unbreakable. Every morning he'd sit with his headphones, his pen and his voice. Sometimes he was tired. Sometimes he had no motivation. But he still showed up. And that was the secret, showing up even when you don't feel like it. Mantelpiece clock, the day he almost gave up. One rainy morning he woke up feeling low. He had failed a test at college the day before. His confidence had cracked a little. He sat on his bed and thought, what's the point? I'm still not perfect. But then a line from one of his English podcasts echoed in his mind. Winners are not those who never fail, they are those who never quit. He sighed, smiled faintly and picked up his notebook. Just 15 minutes, he told himself. He started listening to a small story and repeating sentences. Slowly his mood lifted. By the end of the session his heart was lighter, his energy stronger. That day he realized, English practice wasn't just building his language. It was building his discipline. The calendar trick. To keep himself accountable, Ahmed made a small chart on his wall. Every day he practiced, he marked a red X. After a week, the line of X's looked satisfying. After a month, it looked beautiful. And after 3 months, it looked powerful. A proof that small habits can build something big. Whenever he felt lazy, he'd look at that wall and whisper, "I can't break the chain." Those 15 minutes had become part of his identity. He wasn't just learning English anymore, he was living it. Flexed biceps, the invisible progress. The funny thing was, he didn't notice his progress every day. Some days he felt stuck. But every few weeks he'd suddenly realize something. He understood podcasts faster. He used new words naturally. He could express emotions more deeply. He realized that progress doesn't shout, it whispers. You only hear it when you stay consistent long enough. Microphone, the big moment. Months later, Ahmed's teacher announced an English speech competition. The old Ahmed would have avoided it. But this new Ahmed raised his hand. He spent days preparing, shadowing his speech like a pro. On the day of the competition, his hands trembled slightly, but his heart was strong. He stood on stage and began. "Good morning, everyone. 6 months ago, I was afraid to speak in English. Today, I'm speaking with confidence, not because I'm perfect, but because I never stopped practicing." The audience listened quietly. His words weren't fancy, but they were honest and powerful. When he finished, the room filled with applause. His teacher smiled and said, "Ahmed, this is fluency, confidence, not perfection. Sunrise over mountains, the habit that never ends." That evening, Ahmed went home and wrote his final note in his learning journal. Fluency is not a destination. It's a daily journey, 15 minutes at a time. He closed the notebook gently. His journey wasn't over. It had just become part of his life. Even now, when he woke up, he didn't need motivation. He didn't need reminders. He just practiced because it felt natural. He understood now that language learning was never about luck or talent. It was about consistency. Even a few minutes every day could do more than hours once a week. Brain what he learned. When his cousin Saad left, Ahmed gave him one piece of advice. Don't wait for the perfect day. Don't wait for the right mood. Just start 15 minutes a day. It's not about time, it's about trust. Trust in yourself. Saad nodded thoughtfully. Maybe he didn't fully believe it yet, but Ahmed knew he would. Once he experienced the magic of consistency. Crescent moon, the reflection. That night, Ahmed stood by his window looking at the quiet city lights. He thought about his journey. From fear to confidence. From silence to speech. From confusion to clarity. He whispered to himself, 15 minutes. Every single day. That's how I changed my life. The wind blew softly and he smiled. English wasn't a dream anymore. It was part of him. He had built his fluency one small step at a time. And that's exactly how great things are always built. Sparkle's lesson from Act 7. You don't need hours to change your life. You just need consistency. Habit number 7. Stopwatch, practice 15 minutes daily. Flex biceps, never skip. Glowing star, let small efforts create big transformations. Months had passed since Ahmed's speech competition. Life had gone back to its usual rhythm. Classes, friends, work. But something deep inside him had changed forever. English was no longer a subject for him. It was part of who he was. He didn't have to think about practicing anymore. It had become as natural as breathing. Every morning he still listened to his 15-minute podcast, still whispered sentences to himself while walking, and still smiled when he made a new mistake, because he knew mistakes meant progress. Seedling a small spark becomes a flame. One afternoon his younger sister Hina knocked on his door. Can I borrow your notebook? Ahmed looked up surprised. Which one? The English one, she said shyly. I want to start learning too. He handed her the old, worn-out notebook, the one filled with his daily notes, corrections, and dreams. As she flipped through the pages, her eyes widened. Habit number 1. Listen every day. Habit number 2. Practice pronunciation. Habit number 3. Build vocabulary with stories. Habit number 4. Speak even if you're wrong. Habit number 5. Shadow like an echo. Habit number 6. Think in English. Habit number 7. Stay consistent. She looked up and smiled. Can you teach me too? Ahmed's heart warmed. Of course, he said. But remember, I'm not your teacher. I'm your practice partner. That evening they sat together repeating lines from a short podcast. Hina laughed when she made a mistake and Ahmed laughed with her. For the first time their home echoed with the sound of learning. Confident, joyful, fearless. Globe showing Europe, Africa, the classroom of change. A few weeks later, Ahmed's English teacher invited him to share his story with the new class. At first he hesitated. What can I even say, he thought. But then he remembered his first day sitting at the back of the room afraid to speak. Now he was being asked to inspire others. He took a deep breath and began. When I started, I couldn't even say a full sentence. I waited for the perfect moment to begin, but that moment never came. Then I realized, small steps every day are better than one big step someday. The students listened silently, their notebooks forgotten. Fluency isn't magic, Ahmed continued. It's 15 minutes of effort every single day. And the courage to keep speaking even when you sound wrong. When he finished, the teacher smiled and said, Thank you, Ahmed. You didn't just learn English, you learned discipline. Speech balloon. A message spreads. Over time, more students started following Ahmed's 7 habits. They began small, listening to English podcasts, writing short diaries, or talking to themselves in the mirror. Some even called it the Ahmed method. He would laugh every time someone said that. I didn't invent anything, he'd reply. I just didn't quit. Still, seeing others grow made him proud. He started recording short motivational clips and posting them online. Simple messages in both Urdu and English. Don't chase perfection. Chase progress. Your 15 minutes matter. Fluency starts with a single word. Today. To his surprise, those videos started spreading fast. People commented things like, This helped me start again. I thought I was too old to learn, but your story changed my mind. Ahmed smiled quietly. His voice, once full of fear, was now giving others hope. Airplane. The bigger dream. Months later, Ahmed applied for an internship at an international company. The interview was entirely in English. A year ago, the thought of that would have terrified him. But this time he walked in calmly, smiled at the interviewer, and said confidently, Good morning. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. He spoke naturally without hesitation. He didn't need fancy vocabulary, his confidence was enough. A week later he received an email. Congratulations, Ahmed. You've been selected. He couldn't believe it. He whispered to himself, All those mornings, all those small steps, they brought me here. Crescent moon, the final reflection. One night after his first week at the new office, Ahmed stood on his balcony again. The same balcony where months ago he had promised himself to practice daily. He looked at the city lights and thought, I used to think English was a wall. But it was just a door, I only needed to open it. He smiled, remembering his first 15-minute practice session. The nervous voice, the wrong pronunciations, the laughter. Now his voice was steady. His journey was proof that you don't need talent. You need time and trust. He closed his eyes and whispered, if I can do it, anyone can. Sparkle's final message. The 7 habits for fluency. Before sleeping, he opened his phone and wrote his final note for his followers. Lightbulb 1. Listen every day. Speaking head 2. Practice pronunciation. Books 3. Learn words through stories. Speech balloon 4. Speak even if you're wrong. Headphone 5. Shadow native speakers. Brain 6. Think in English. Stopwatch 7. Be consistent 15 minutes daily. Then he added one last line. These 7 habits didn't just teach me English. They taught me how to believe in myself. He pressed post and put the phone down. Outside the night was quiet. Inside his heart was full, not of pride but of peace. He had started as a student. He ended as an inspiration. Glowing star, the final lesson. Fluency is not just about English. It's about faith, in your effort, your time, and your voice. Because when you give your dream 15 minutes a day, sunrise, the world gives you everything back. Here's the bonus chapter, afterward. A reflective, cinematic wrap-up that feels like the ending of a powerful film or podcast series. It connects Ahmed's journey to the audience directly, showing that his story could be yours too. Approximate 700 to 800 words. Emotional, motivational, podcast-ready tone. Microphone bonus chapter. From Ahmed to you, the beginning of your story. The sound of birds filled the morning air. The sun was just rising, golden, quiet, full of promise. Ahmed sat at his desk, sipping tea, looking at his old notebook. The pages were wrinkled, full of scribbles. Words he once struggled to pronounce. Sentences he once practiced over and over. And notes from days when he almost gave up. He smiled softly and whispered, "So this is what growth looks like." Then he opened his laptop and began typing, not for himself, but for you. Seedling to the one who's still afraid to start. Ahmed wrote, "If you're listening to this right now, maybe you're scared to speak. Maybe you think your accent is wrong, or your grammar isn't perfect. Maybe you've failed before. Maybe you've told yourself 100 times, 'Tomorrow I'll start.'" He paused. Outside, a breeze rustled the leaves. Inside, he continued typing. "I used to feel the same. I thought I needed confidence before I could speak. But the truth is, you get confidence by speaking, not before it. Fire the real secret." He leaned back, remembering his own turning point. The day he stopped trying to be perfect and started trying to be consistent. Fluency, he wrote, isn't about being better than others. It's about being better than your yesterday. If you can give 15 minutes to your dream every day, your dream will give you back a new life. Speech balloon, the voice inside you. Then he typed something deeply personal. You don't need to sound like a native speaker. You just need to sound like you. clear, confident, and proud. English is not your identity. It's your bridge to the world. He thought about the first time he heard his own voice in English. Sounded strange, almost foreign. But now it sounded like home. He smiled and added, "Every time you speak even one sentence, you're telling the world, I am learning. I am growing. I am brave." Sparkles the 15-minute promise. Ahmed turned a new page and drew a line across it. On the top he wrote, "The 15-minute promise." Then underneath, "Every day for the next 30 days, I will give 15 minutes to English. I will listen, speak, read, or write, but I will not skip. I will not wait for motivation. I will build it through action." He looked at it for a moment, then whispered, "This is how everything began for me. And this is how it can begin for you." Globe showing Europe, Africa, the community of learners. Ahmed clicked post, and within hours messages started pouring in. Day 1. I listened to an English podcast. Day 3. I spoke in class for the first time. Day 7. My family noticed I sound more confident. It wasn't just Ahmed anymore. It was hundreds of learners from different countries, different ages, different dreams, all united by one habit: 15 minutes of courage. They called it the #Fluency Challenge. Ahmed smiled. He didn't start it to be famous. He started it so no one would feel alone. Crescent moon, full circle. That night, Ahmed received a message from a stranger. "Your story gave me hope. I used to hate English, but now I look forward to it. I talk to myself in the mirror every morning, and I feel alive." Ahmed read the message twice, then closed his eyes and whispered, "That's exactly how I started." He realized something profound. His story was no longer his. It belonged to everyone who believed in progress over perfection. Dizzy the final words. He opened his microphone, hit record, and spoke softly. "My name is Ahmed. I'm not a native speaker. I'm not a teacher. I'm a learner just like you. And if I can change my life with 15 minutes a day, so can you." A short pause. A deep breath. "This isn't the end of my story. It's the beginning of yours." He pressed stop. The recording light turned off, but the echo of his voice continued. Cross phones, headphones, and hearts around the world. Glowing star, final thought. Language is more than words. It's courage in sound form. And courage begins with one step. One sentence. One promise. Today I'll try. And maybe, just maybe, that's how your story begins too. The morning was quiet, bright, and full of promise. Ahmed walked through the small park near his house, earphones in, listening to an English podcast. The birds were singing softly, and for the first time in years, his mind was completely still. No overthinking. No hesitation. Just clarity. He smiled to himself. It had been 1 year since he started his 15-minute-a-day challenge. 1 year of small steps that had changed everything. Sunrise, the beginning, remembered. He remembered the first day clearly. How he had stuttered on simple words like, "excuse me," or "thank you." How embarrassed he felt when his tongue refused to cooperate. Back then, English had felt like a mountain too high to climb. But now, as he listened to his favorite podcast and understood every sentence, he realized something powerful. The mountain didn't get smaller. I just got stronger. The mirror test. Later that day he stood in front of his mirror. The same mirror he used to practice in. The same mirror that once reflected his fear. He smiled and spoke softly. "Hi there. I'm Ahmed and I'm an English speaker." No nervous laugh. No broken rhythm. Just calm, natural confidence. He could see in his reflection not just a man who had learned a language, but a man who had transformed his identity. He had gone from "I can't" to "I can." From "I'll try" to "I do." From silence to expression. Fire the 7 habits that built his freedom. As he sat down with his journal, he began writing the 7 habits that had shaped him. Consistency. Just 15 minutes every single day. No excuses. Listening practice. Turning his ears into teachers. Shadowing. Speaking along with podcasts to sound natural. Mistake acceptance. Learning from every failure. Daily speaking practice. Turning fear into a friend. Thinking in English. Living the language, not translating it. Confidence through action. Speaking before feeling ready. Each habit was a step. And together they built his fluency foundation. Telephone receiver. The unexpected call. One evening his teacher called him. "Ahmed, would you like to be a guest on our English podcast next week? We're inviting learners to share their journey." For a moment, Ahmed was silent. A year ago he would have said no. But this time his voice was steady. "Yes. I'd love to." Studio microphone. The podcast moment. The day arrived. He sat in front of the microphone, hands calm, mind ready. The host smiled and said, "Ahmed, tell us about your journey. How did you become fluent?" Ahmed took a breath and began speaking. The words flowed effortlessly. Not memorized, not rehearsed, just real. "I started small. Just 15 minutes a day. I listened, I repeated, I made mistakes, and I kept going. I learned that fluency is not about being perfect. It's about being brave enough to speak even when you're not." The host nodded, impressed. Listeners from all over the world were tuning in. One message after another began to appear in the live chat. "Ahmed, your story inspired me. I'm starting my 15-minute routine today. You made me believe it's possible." Ahmed smiled, and in that moment he understood. He hadn't just learned English. He had found his voice. Globe showing Europe, Africa, the bigger picture. Weeks passed and Ahmed's message spread online. He began helping others. Not as a teacher but as a friend who understood the struggle. He started a small online group called Speak Naturally Challenge. Every day people from around the world joined for 15 minutes. To listen, repeat, and speak without fear. Ahmed guided them gently, sharing his own methods. Don't aim for perfection. Aim for connection. 1 minute of speaking is worth 10 minutes of fear. You don't need perfect English. You need brave English. Crescent moon. The reflection night. One night after a long session, Ahmed went for a walk. The city lights reflected in his eyes. He thought about who he used to be. A boy afraid to speak, hiding behind silence. Now he was the voice encouraging others to speak up. He looked up at the stars and whispered, "Fluency isn't about language. It's about freedom. Freedom to express. Freedom to connect. Freedom to be heard." Dizzy the legacy. Months later, Ahmed's story was featured on the same podcast that had once inspired him. Listeners loved it. His words became a motto for learners everywhere. Just 15 minutes. Every day. Without fear. His simple journey had turned into a global movement. But for Ahmed, the real success wasn't fame. It was the quiet confidence he now carried inside. He no longer worried about mistakes. He no longer doubted his worth. He had found peace in his progress. Sunrise, the new beginning. The next morning, Ahmed started his day the same way he always had. With a cup of tea, a podcast, and a smile. He pressed play and whispered to himself, "One more day. One more lesson. One more chance to grow." As he knew, learning never truly ends. It only evolves. And as his favorite quote said, "Every word you speak is a step toward the person you're becoming." He closed his notebook and smiled. The story of learning English was over. But the story of becoming himself had just begun. Glowing star final line. Fluency is not about speaking fast. It's about speaking with heart. And every learner, including you, can do that.